One Saturday night in 1978, terrible events began to unfold close to a surf life saving club on Barrenjoey Road. It was just after midnight when Trudie Adams left the surf club dance. Public transport was unreliable, so she decided to hitchhike home. Trudie Adams was never seen again. It's a 40-year-old mystery that still haunts a family and a community.
I don't want vengeance. I just want to know what happened to her.
And points to a criminal monster and sexual predator with police connections, allowed to roam free for years. So this is the identikit that police compiled after women started coming forward and describing the man who attacked them. My name is Ruby Jones. I'm an investigative journalist working with crime reporter Neil Mercer. We're investigating the unsolved disappearance and almost certain murder of Trudie Adams, a crime with links to a series of unsolved rapes on Sydney's northern beaches around the same time.
Look at the hair, and here's a photograph.
Curly hair.
It's curly hair. Prime suspect.
Some rape victims identified one of their attackers as Neville Tween, safebreaker, drug dealer and sex offender.
The rapes stop after Trudy disappears.
Neville Tween had a powerful friend, Mark Standen, one of the most senior and most corrupt cops in the country. Did their relationship allow Tween to escape justice?
The really big question here is how the hell does Trudie's disappearance on the northern beaches end up somehow intertwined in possible police corruption?
This case goes to bigger things. How violence against women has often gone unpunished. But now, across society, there's a reckoning. What happened to Trudie that night on Barrenjoey Road? Career criminal Neville Tween, also known as John Anderson, is our prime suspect in Trudie Adams' disappearance and at least 14 rapes. But Tween was never charged, and it was 30 years before he was even questioned about Trudie Adams or the rapes.
Well, it's one of two things, Ruby. It's either utter incompetence or it's corruption.
Neville Tween died in 2013 while in jail for drug offences. But we've been told he was an informant and friend to corrupt cop Mark Standen, who is serving one of the longest sentences handed to an Australian police officer for his own drug offences. How close was their personal relationship? And could Mark Standen know what happened to Trudie Adams?
I think the two big questions for us, the first one is, did Neville Tween kill Trudie Adams? And the second one is, was he protected by Mark Standen?
And if so, when did that protection start?
Was there any potential interference in Trudie Adams' case right from the beginning? And whether there was anyone who could have been in touch with New South Wales detectives to maybe put them off investigating Tween any further?
You've got one of the most senior law enforcement officers in the country involved in a massive drug importation, and it seems like the authorities have just gone, oh well, we've got him for that, he's going to jail, let's forget about everything else. Nobody wants to lift a lot of these rocks up because they don't know what they're going to find underneath.
Yeah.
We've already tracked down the first person to expose Tween and Standen's close relationship.
Neville Tween was going away on family weekends with the Standen family.
In 2008, then Detective Jason McLeod says he discovered tween was used as a character reference on Standen's son Matthew's application to join the New South Wales Police.
I realised that Matthew would not have possibly had an awareness of the criminal history or what Neville Tween represented.
Mark and Matthew Standen have both strenuously denied Matthew used Neville Tween as a reference. Jason also found evidence that some members of each family were in business together.
There was an importation company that had been established in the early 90s. The directors was Susan Anderson and Glenn Standen. Susan Anderson was Neville Tween's former wife, and I'm led to believe that Glenn Standen is Mark's brother.
And do you think anybody's investigated that?
I don't think anyone's been made aware of it, but it's certainly it's alarming. I think that there's some things there that just jump out at you that are too significant to ignore.
We've sourced the registration papers for the company run by members of Tween and Standen's families.
Jags Wholesale Imports Proprietary Limited, OK.
Registered in 93, deregistered in 2002. So Susan K. Anderson was the most recent director.
We understand that Jags Wholesale Imports was a lingerie business. The company was incorporated in 1993, 1 year before we're told Mark Standen registered Neville Tween as an informant.
What's of real significance for us, I think, is that Glenn Thomas Standen is a director in 93 to 95, and at the same time John David Anderson, also known as Neville Tween, is a director at the same time.
You know, it's possible that Glenn Standen has no knowledge of Neville Tween's criminal history.
There's no suggestion there's anything corrupt about it.
When Tween was arrested for growing cannabis, Glenn Standen severed his ties with the lingerie company. We're looking for links between Standen, Tween and Trudy. In 1979, the investigation into her disappearance was recorded on hundreds of police running sheets. And in a remarkable coincidence, Mark Standen's name is on one of them. As a young detective in the Narcotics Bureau, Standen investigated whether Northern Beach's drug dealers had recruited Trudy to smuggle drugs into Australia from Bali.
The police have always discounted the theory.
I've never had any information that would substantiate that she was in any way involved in any drug matters.
We also found no evidence that Trudy was part of the drug trade, but we know Neville Tween was involved with drugs at the time and a suspect in Trudy's disappearance. So did Standen meet Tween in 1979 while looking into Trudy's connection to drugs? It's difficult to interview a prisoner in New South Wales, but we have a source who's put us in contact. We're writing to Mark Standen to ask him if he knows anything about Tween and Trudy.
As you're aware, one of your informants, Neville Tween, was called to the 2011 inquest. We would be very keen to speak to you about your relationship with Tween/John Anderson in person. But if this is not possible, we'd appreciate if we could put some questions to you in writing. I think what we're doing here is we're tracing a larger story. We're really connecting the dots from Trudie Adams potentially all the way to Mark Standen, and I think that's something that hasn't been done before. People have asked questions about whether Neville Tween was the one who killed Trudie Adams, but I don't think that anyone has ever taken a bigger look and said, well, if he was involved, is there a reason that he was never charged? While waiting to hear back from Mark Standen, we've uncovered a forgotten glimpse of Trudy.
We're up the north coast of New South Wales. We're about to go and see a guy called Steve Otten, who more than 40 years ago made a movie in which Trudy had a bit part.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to, to get a fuller picture of who Trudy was. And not only that, but also her friends. Several of her friends are in this film as well. For the first time, we're actually going to be able to see Trudy. Ruby.
In 1977, Steve Otten made a surf film on Sydney's northern beaches called Highway 1.
I'd never made a film before. We didn't really want professional names and things. We just wanted to sort of do a thing with local people. And Trudy was one of them, yeah.
So where were you?
Yeah, we're in the sound booth.
So she's just hanging out there watching what happens, seeing the recording.
She's just having a great time.
She's got a big smile on her face.
She always had a big smile. She was like a sparkler. She's always just sparkling, you know, like...
Yeah, it sounds like almost everyone adored her.
Yeah, it's pretty all right. No, I just miss her. I just think that's why I'm willing to give all the help I can.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time for everyone.
It's a long time, isn't it?
That's
How
you.
old are you there?
I was 26.
Right, yeah.
So Trudy's scene's coming up.
Okay. This is Trudie over here?
Yeah, that's Trudy.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a spin out watching and seeing her. Yeah, it really is.
I wish they weren't going away. Yeah. It'd be a bit boring. Yeah. Doesn't matter though. Get a bit of sunbaking done.
So the boys all grab the surfboards and get in the surf, and the girls are hanging out here. It just looks like a really happy time. There's a dog on the roof of the car.
It's a great shot.
Get off!
That's Trudy there.
It's Trudie getting out of the car.
And there's another little group hanging out.
I just think you get a real sense of history of that era.
You do,
Of the 70s, the surf scene.
Trudy, is that Peter out there? Yeah. Went out to dinner last night at Colin Candle Creek. It was so good. Had such a good time. Yeah. Really nice. Have you been up there yet? Yeah. It's more than 100 years old. Yeah, the brothers used to live there.
And they're having this beautiful time together, and I mean, we know what happened next, and that's just, it's really actually awful watching it in some ways.
No one's seen Steve's film for decades.
Did it sort of hit you today?
It did, yeah. I got pins and needles there.
It's probably fair to say that you're the only person with actual moving vision of her. I mean...
I'd say that's for sure, yeah. And people can really see what a lovely girl she was. And it wasn't long after that she went missing.
"30 years after Trudy disappeared, Detective Gavin McKean led the strike force that reopened the cold case. It was 2008, and Tween and Standen were both in jail for separate offences related to drugs. When Gavin interviewed them about Trudy and the rapes, both men denied any knowledge. Does Gavin believe their relationship affected the case?
Well, if these guys have an improper relationship, Mark Standen being high up in the New South Wales Crime Commission and Mr Tween being a career criminal and also is a prime suspect in a murder and a series of rapes on the Northern Beaches, we needed to know at what level this relationship between him and Mark Standen was affecting any of these other things I've mentioned. I looked into it as far as I could in relation to Trudy Adams. My angle was, I wonder if Mark Standen contributed in some way to this investigation going away in '78. And that's why I went and interviewed him.
Do you think they did?
I think it's possible. I mean, I can't really say either way. All I can say is his name appeared on the running sheets of the investigation. And sometime later, this relationship is now well documented, that there was a relationship between the two of them. It's not speculation, it is a fact. But in lieu of that, Mark Standen was also quite young at the time. He would have been quite a new detective, which doesn't preclude him in any way of being able to potentially interfere, but it might lessen the probability This is complete speculation, but I don't think it would have been protection in the form of, I know you killed her, don't worry, we're sweet. I think it would have been more to the end of, hey mate, the cops are looking at you, you might want to pull your head in. I think, yeah, people have to draw their own conclusions on that, yeah.
The earlier Tween and Standen's relationship began, the more likely that it could have affected Trudie's case. We've tracked down ex-detective Mick Kennedy, now a criminologist. He knew Mark Standen. He also knew Tween and his partner in crime, Ray Johnson, by reputation as ruthless and violent drug dealers. How early does Mick believe their association began?
So you think Mark Standen might have first learnt of Tween and Johnson in the late 70s, around the time of Trudie's disappearance?
Some say it was much later and it was in the 90s. I don't believe that. I believe that this relationship that was established was probably more like in the mid-80s. And that's something also other colleagues believe. That Standen back then was completely and utterly naive. He was just this naive guy who came from a Catholic school. Tween would have seen him coming and would have played him completely off a break, and it would have been a long-term investment for Tween, and that's what it's proved to be.
What do you think the time period for that would have been?
I don't know. I think it's quite likely that when Standen moved up to the Central Coast, I'd say it would have had something to do with scuba diving, because that was a common interest of all of them. Johnson owned an ocean-going speedboat. Tween and Standen and others would all go out and they'd go scuba diving for 2 or 3 hours, which is pretty sus stuff when you're talking about drug dealers, you know.
In 2006, Neville Tween was convicted for smuggling drugs in containers welded to the hulls of ships, drugs he dived to retrieve. Standen denies scuba diving with Tween, but Mick believes they did dive together as a part of Tween's plan.
By the time Standen realised that the dives were a lot more involved than just going out there for a bit of a splash around, it's too late. He's in. And clearly he's compromised. He's a family friend. The wives know each other. The children are familiar with each other. It becomes very, very difficult, you know. How can he possibly be a family friend? How the fuck could you even let him in your house knowing what he's done? This is dangerous stuff. You're dealing with people who have no conscience about what they do. They're ruthless, the ends justify the means. They have no regard for human safety or human life. You'll be used. I think the relationship between Tween and Standen was an unholy relationship that suited Tween, not one that suited Standen.
What Mick Kennedy said about Standen and Tween was really different to anything that we've heard before, and what we've been investigating is whether or not Standen was protecting Tween and giving him information and stopping people from investigating him for the rapes and for the murder of Trudie Adams. And what Mick Kennedy was saying was that is absolutely not how the relationship between Standen and Tween would have worked. Tween would have been manipulating Standen, and Standen would have just been doing whatever Tween wanted.
Our source has been in touch to say Mark Standen will answer our questions in writing. Now we're revisiting the police investigations of the 14 rapes that occurred before Trudie disappeared, looking for any links to Neville Tween that may have been missed.
After Trudie's disappearance, a series of girls began to come into Mona Vale police station to report a series of rapes, horrifying rapes that they'd been too scared to talk about before.
It looks like the same persons are responsible. They're brought to this area, and one of the girls in particular has described an area that the rape took place, which is similar to the area we're searching.
And in each case there were 2 men?
Each case 2 men.
Neville Tween lived alongside Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park, close to where the rapes took place. Several rape victims identified him and his associate Len Evans from a selection of mugshots. Despite this, no charges were laid, and both men denied any involvement. But in the record of Gavin McKean's investigation, we've found evidence that suggests they were up to something in the national park.
So one of the interesting things is that Tween goes to see Leonard Evans while Evans is in Long Bay, and apparently says words to the effect, I've done a couple of Ku-ring-gai jobs in your honour. And Leonard Evans later repeats this conversation to another inmate. And the police puts Tween, the quote is that you'd done a couple of Ku-ring-gai jobs in his honour. Tween says, when was that? July 78. But he doesn't ask, what's a Ku-ring-gai job?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because if you're completely innocent, you'd be going,
What's a Ku-ring-gai job?
what's a Ku-ring-gai job?
Yeah.
He never goes, what are you talking about? He just says what's an absolute lie. Could even be fabricated for all I know.
2 weeks after Trudy disappeared, a cellmate of Len Evans testified that Evans described how he and Tween abducted and raped young women in Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. Evans denies this, but the cellmate's account is consistent with statements from the rape victims, some of which had never been made public. Women were abducted at gunpoint on or near Barrenjoey Road. Often the two attackers wore disguises, wigs and false beards. Handcuffed and blindfolded, the women were brought to bushland and a mattress. At times the guns were fired to scare them into silence. Women and girls as young as 14 were repeatedly raped. And when one young woman tried to fight back, the gun went off, narrowly missing her. What I think is significant about all of those attacks is that they were becoming more violent. You know, in one case not long before Trudy disappeared, one of the women was hit with a gun on the face, and they were firing them. They were actually firing these guns. The actions of these rapists matched the indecent assault Neville Tween was convicted for. But incredibly, he still wasn't questioned. Did the police mess up? We've found startling evidence that they may have. Not long after Trudy vanished, Neville Tween and Ray Johnson were arrested in Western Sydney under circumstances that should have blown the case wide open.
All these young women are coming forward saying the attackers sometimes wore beards, wigs. Not long after these attacks, Neville Tween is picked up by the police with wigs and false beards, guns.
They also had a police scanner, and some of these women said that they heard a funny sounding radio, something that could have been a police scanner. And despite all of that, when he gets arrested and potentially has evidence on him or in his car that could link him to those attacks, the dots aren't joined.
Yeah, well, they didn't have computers, and you've got one team of police arresting him in possession of all this stuff. Over here, you've got another team of police investigating all these assaults and the Trudy matter as well. And it appears that that team of police didn't know that this team of police had these clues.
And the police seem to have missed the importance of another clue found in the national park, one that should have linked Tween to the series of rapes. Back in the 70s, then park ranger Brian Walker often heard gunshots and saw strange bright lights in Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park at night. He remembers finding a freshly dug grave that's still unexplained. And in 1978, he came across a mattress in a bush clearing.
It's pretty isolated back then, you know.
Brian alerted police to the mattress, but he also found another clue close by. He's taking us back there.
And this is the spot. The mattress was just situated right there.
So this could actually be the area where the girls were assaulted, where we're standing.
I'm pretty well 100% sure.
Searching the site, Brian found a fuel canister for an oxyacetylene torch.
I said to the police at the time, there's an oxy bottle hidden there. And they said, what do you reckon those scenarios are?
Well, oxyacetylene could be used as part of a safe breaking.
Yeah, it cuts metal.
Neville Tween was known to use an oxyacetylene-powered thermal lance to crack safes, and stolen safes were also found here.
Out here in the middle of the night, if you lit up an acetylene bottle, it would be so bright here in the night, it would be frightening. It would be bloody frightening.
If we think that this is potentially the place that these women were taken to,
yes,
then it's also potentially the place that Trudy was taken to.
Yeah. I'll say there's probably a very good chance of that.
Is that something that you've kind of thought about when you've thought about this case?
Yeah, I'd say yes. If she met with foul play somewhere here in the bush, this would be the site. Yeah, that's my opinion. I've come back after bushfires and different things and strolled through the bush just hoping to find something, but nothing's turned up, not a thing.
When I think about all of the attacks all in a row escalating in the 1970s and this idea of the Northern Beaches culture being pretty sexually aggressive and pretty scary, it makes me angry because I think about what it would feel like to be a young woman then and to know that attacks are almost expected in some ways. It makes me furious to think that that would be the situation and you just have to kind of live with that.
I'm not the first investigator to be frustrated by the lack of justice for Trudy and the rape victims. Police investigated these cases 4 times.
There is actually one really interesting photo of Neville Tween going to the inquest in handcuffs.
The 2011 inquest into Trudy Adams' disappearance was the criminal justice system's most recent and in many ways best attempt to crack the case.
It's clear that Neville Tween is the main suspect in the disappearance of Trudy Adams. You know, he brings up the fact that, well, if I was your main suspect, why have I never ever been interviewed about this? Which, I mean, that is an interesting question. There does seem to be a lot of certainty from some police officers that he's responsible.
Some victims reported that the person who raped them had a speech impediment. For the first time, we've secured permission to broadcast Neville Tween's voice, recorded when he gave evidence at the inquest.
We believe he has a particular speech impediment. We're not quite sure. Stutter, lisp, there's conflicting versions. But the reason we wanted to be able to play these tapes is that it might trigger something in somebody to come forward.
Tween is being questioned by the coroner and his assisting counsel.
Would it be fair to say that you appeared in court charged with a great many crimes before you were 20?
Well, I don't know about a great many.
Well, more than the average.
Well, what's the average?
I don't know.
I don't say I'm an angel, I'm not saying that.
All right, well, we're getting somewhere. Are you also aware that members of the New South Wales Police Force and possibly others consider you to be a suspect in a series of rapes?
Yes, I read that in the Sun Herald. No police told me that. No one ever come out and interviewed me about that. No one ever showed me a photograph, asked me to go on a line-up in 30 years. And they reckon they got a red-hot case.
One of the interesting things, and it goes to this speech impediment, instead of photograph, he said, if my hearing's correct, photograph.
And true instead of true?
And he said operate instead of operate. I'm not sure what you'd call it.
No, I don't know either.
But he has a particular way of speaking.
It's unusual.
Yeah.
In 1971, on the 6th of March Did you, with Len Evans, pick up a couple of young girls and take them to a bushland setting and rape them at gunpoint?
Definitely not. At no time have I even been accused of such a thing. All these women said it looks like Tween or Anderson. Not once did they even show a photograph, line me up to see the girls, you know, or put me before them. No such thing as a fair go, is there?
The 2011 inquest buoyed the hopes of many. Police, the Northern Beaches community, Trudie's friends and family.
We tried everything we could to try and find out what happened to my daughter. But unfortunately, we didn't get any really good leads. And I'm just hoping that from this particular press conference now that the police might get some more leads and be able to solve the crime, and the people responsible for my daughter's disappearance will be brought to justice.
Many of Trudie's friends were at the inquest. Anita Starkey and Leanne Weir remember how they were affected.
When it was announced that there would be an inquest into Trudie's disappearance, were you hopeful that something would...
I was very hopeful. At last, they're doing something. What about you?
I just thought this will be it. Once and for all, they're going to solve it. There's going to be an outcome.
Yes, a good outcome.
Yeah.
Out of a bad outcome.
Yeah. Something like that happens and it just changes everything. We lost somebody that was so close, which was awful. And we'll never ever get over it.
And there's somebody that didn't deserve what she got.
That's right.
Yeah.
Leanne and Anita pinned their hopes for a breakthrough on the questioning under oath of Neville Tween.
He had a number of names, John Anderson, Neville Tween. Did you see him in the witness box?
Yeah, I think he was led in, he was handcuffed, and he sat in the stand, and then he leant forward and gave us all the death stare, as if to say, you know, I'm looking at all of you, and he was scary looking, and I think he knew it, and he actually played on it. I think he tried to make everybody feel intimidated. I think that was his power. Make everyone feel like they were next. That's what I felt.
You know, if it was Neville Tween who was responsible, he's now died. What do you make of that?
He's got to have a partner in crime somewhere. Someone knows something. Someone who was with him that night in the car. She would have fought with her life. I know that for a fact. She was very strong-willed, and she would have put up a good fight. I know that.
Peter Hamill was the barrister who assisted the coroner at the 2011 inquest. His job was to cross-examine Neville Tween. Peter's now a judge. How close did he get to cracking his man?
When you started the inquest, did you have any hopes that there could be a breakthrough, or there would be a breakthrough, that Tween might actually say something?
The coroner wouldn't have been conducting the inquest if there wasn't at least some hope that someone would crack, just someone may come forward with information.
Do you think Neville Tween had any intention of trying to help?
No, I'm certain he had no intention of trying to help. So what's happening here is that there's an inquest to try to find out what happened to an 18-year-old young woman back in the 70s?
Yes, that would be more interesting in all this other crap.
Thanks very much for helping me.
All right.
The gentleman sitting here is Trudie's dad. And there's a number of other people in the back of the court who are friends of Trudie. And the objective is to get to the truth.
Well, it's all been one-way traffic, hasn't it? It's always been in the paper, whatever the police want put in the paper and that. But where's all the evidence of 30 years?
And the reason in that clip I mentioned that Trudie's dad was there was to see if it provoked any kind of a human response from Mr. Tween, and I don't think it did. I don't think he cared.
Did you get a sense that he was kind of enjoying it?
Yeah, I thought he enjoyed the sparring.
match. He knew where I was coming from. He'd had people like me appearing for him for the last 30 years, so he knew exactly the sort of tricks I'd be playing.
Peter Hamill set out to catch Tween lying. Although not interviewed in 1978, Tween was interviewed in 2009 by Detective Gavin McKean when police reopened the Trudie Adams cold case.
And you've never been charged with anything to do with the disappearance of Trudie Adams, correct?
There's nothing for me to be charged with. It's all speculation.
Did you get interviewed by the police or not?
No. When you say interview, what's your definition of it?
That's okay, I'm quite comfortable with that answer, sir.
No, I need to know what your definition is, because my definition and yours could be miles apart.
Just speaking to me then, you made an assertion that you'd never been interviewed by the police, which is a claim that you know is palpably untrue.
No, just a minute, What police are you referring to now? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
Now, let me ask the questions, OK? And then we'll get out of here a lot quicker. When you were in New Zealand, did you meet a fellow called Len or Leonard Evans?
Yes.
And did you become a friend of his over many years?
Yes.
And I think that you committed some crimes together over the years?
No.
No?
No.
Did Len Evans ever come to Australia?
Oh, yes. There was one exception there.
What do you mean, one exception to what?
Oh, we did something together.
What did you do together?
No interest to you.
What did you do?
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
What did you do?
I'm not going to tell you. Do I have to tell him?
It was what we were dealing with the whole day. I mean, it was just... he would say anything until he was confronted with solid evidence that what he just said was a lie. And so his behaviour in the witness box reflected an arrogance, I thought.
After a full day of questioning Tween, there was no breakthrough, no hint of an admission. The 2011 coronial inquest could not find enough to implicate Neville Tween. Having sifted through 40 years of evidence, we find that baffling. We want to test whether there was any stage where Tween could have been prosecuted for Trudy or the rapes.
It'd be great to get some insight into how it fell short of being able to be prosecuted.
We've asked Nicholas Cowdery to help us. He was a New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions for 17 years.
We're also really interested in the series of rapes that happened on the northern beaches before she disappeared, because there is some strong circumstantial evidence around those rapes, and we're wondering if you could give us your opinion on those.
You're asking me to look at different time periods, so that is going to require some adjustment of the legal context that existed at those particular times, whether or not there were changes in the law relating to the admissibility of evidence of different kinds.
Interview transcripts. OK, Nick, we'll bring these down to your car. If you could. Thank you.
It will take Nick some weeks to evaluate the evidence against Neville Tween. Mark Standen has replied to us in 3 extraordinarily detailed letters from jail. He denies all accusations made against him about Neville Tween. He says he never went scuba diving with Tween, but acknowledges he did dive with Tween's wife Susan at the local club. And he's adamant his son Matthew did not use Neville Tween as a character reference on his application to join the police. We're putting Mark and Matthew Standen's denials to Jason McLeod, the former detective who uncovered the family connection.
Look, I never obviously cited the application, but I had put down Neville or John Anderson as a suspect for my matter, and I'd flagged him on the police system. And so I got a notification from a young constable at the recruitment branch. He actually went and got the application, and the details were very specific. It was read to me verbatims.
And so did he say that, you know, on this application that I'm looking at, that Matthew Standen has listed Anderson/Tween as a personal reference?
Yes, the context was that he was a referee, a character referee.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Because of the seriousness of what he'd read to me, I asked him to preserve it as a potential exhibit. And I know they did that because the following week I got a phone call from his sergeant. And the reason she rang me was because Mark had rung and asked what was happening with his son's application to join the police.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So it was quite transparent what was occurring.
Why do you think Mark Standen would so categorically deny that?
Look, I would suggest that, first and foremost, to protect his son, Matthew, from any fallout from what's occurred, that, you know, the damage that Mark has impacted upon his family.
The police haven't given us access to the actual application, but Jason's recollections are clear. What then of Mark and Matthew Standen's vigorous denials? In his second letter to us, Standen sets out a possible explanation. In 2008, when Matthew applied to join the police, Mark Standen was under AFP surveillance. His phones were tapped. Standen suggests that the AFP could have alerted police recruitment to his and Tween's relationship in an attempt to torpedo Matthew's application. In this case, a note mentioning Tween would have been attached to Matthew's file, and that could have been read to Jason.
He's not denying that his son had a relationship with Neville Tween. He's not denying that at all. All he's denying is the very specific allegation that Matthew put down Anderson's name on this application.
Yeah, as a reference, he denies that quite categorically. But this is the most comprehensive telling of the relationship, and it comes from Standen himself. The information is the crucial thing here. And Mark Standen says those connections were true. They lived close by. They walked their dogs in the same dog park. They went to the same tennis court. Their kids went to the same school.
The way he characterises this, though, is that it was unavoidable. They couldn't help but socialise. And to me, that doesn't really wash. You know, you can avoid socialising with anyone if you want to.
Well, also he says that at that stage he'd formed the view that Neville Tween was a retired old villain who'd gone up the coast of New South Wales to seek a quiet life. But if he's not a serious criminal, why is he registering him as an informant in around about 1994? He's still an active criminal, and Standen is associating with him, and their families are associating. It's not your normal police officer-informant relationship. It's just not.
In response to us asking whether he knew what happened to Trudy Adams, Standen has denied any knowledge.
We've asked him if he's got any information that could help us, and he says that he doesn't. It's possible that he doesn't. I don't know whether Mark Standen and Neville Tween ever had any conversation about what Tween might have been doing back in the 70s. You know, that conversation might never have happened. But they did know each other for a long time. So whether or not he was protecting Tween, I don't think we can answer that definitively because we don't have any evidence. But what we do know, because Mark Standen has told us, is that they spent a lot of time together.
Trudy's loss is made more tragic by the 40-year failure to bring her killer to justice. Nick Cowdery has now weighed our evidence and the discoveries from 4 police investigations into Trudy and the rapes. He's ready to give us his opinion on the case against Neville Tween.
At the end of the inquest, the coroner said that he thought that something had happened to Trudy, probably on the night that she disappeared, but he couldn't say as to how or who.
I think a court would be satisfied that Trudy Adams was last seen outside the surf club on the other side of the road between 12 and 12:30 at night, getting into a 1977 beige Holden panel van without side windows. We know nothing more from the evidence.
So in your mind, is there anything at all that links Neville Tween to Trudy Adams?
In my view, there is nothing that links Neville Tween to the disappearance of Trudy Adams, in the sense of evidence that could be used in a court.
Apart from suspicion?
Suspicion is not enough for a court of law. Without evidence, nobody can be identified and the events cannot be described.
And back in 78, 79, there were a few women who identified Neville Tween as the person who they say had attacked them.
Well, talking about the series of sexual assaults, which is different from the Trudie Adams investigation, it's my view that having identified Tween as one of the perpetrators, that provided a body of evidence of events which were strikingly similar. And under the law pre-1995, those striking similarities could have been used to pin Tween to those other offences and get convictions against him. And in contrast to the investigation into Trudie's disappearance, I think the investigation into that series of offences was somewhat lacking. I think you have to say that if there had been a more proactive response by police to the first complaints, it might well have resulted in other offences not being committed.
It's frustrating to know that Nick Cowdery thinks that police did everything they could for Trudie's case and yet still came up short. But I think if the rape cases had been handled better by police at the time, perhaps further sexual assaults could have been prevented and perhaps Trudie wouldn't have gone missing.
It appears that on the sexual assaults, on those rapes of those 14 young women, that they dropped the ball.
There is such a strong circumstantial case and there is a lot linking Neville Tween to these sexual assaults. The attacks were getting more violent, they were escalating, there was guns being used, and then Trudie disappears and they all stop.
It's possible that it could be a random attacker, but given what we know about Neville Tween and that he's prowling the northern beaches, we know he's picking up these young women. It seems likely to me, more than likely, that he's responsible for Trudie's disappearance as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have learned by talking to a lot of people who knew Trudie is that Trudie was a very strong-willed young woman and she would have resisted probably quite fiercely. And one theory that the police have is that she did resist fiercely and in that process was killed, was murdered.
It is very isolated. 40 years ago, it would have been a dirt road, I would say.
I reckon you're right.
It's been 10 months since we began investigating Trudie's disappearance, and we're on to a new lead.
Our source is a former police officer. He's been reliable in the past.
Neil's source lived on the northern beaches in the 70s and 80s and recalls a conversation with two local criminals after Trudie vanished. Commenting on an article about Trudie in the newspaper, one of the criminals said he'd heard her body had been dumped into Smith's Creek off Christmas Tree Hill.
So this whole area would be Christmas Tree Hill, not just this little section?
Not just these couple of outcrops.
When he heard this, Neil's source was no longer a cop. As far as we know, the information wasn't followed up or made public until now.
What we were told was that Trudie's body was put in the water down below us at a certain spot.
In a particularly deep body of water. It was all very specific. He said they've got Smith's Creek on one side and a Coal and Candle Creek on the other side. One of the two criminals he's talking to, this guy was in the business of helping to dispose of bodies in a certain manner by wrapping them in chicken wire and disposing of them into the water, presumably.
This is the latest of hundreds of leads about Trudie to emerge over 40 years.
The one thing we don't want to do is to overemphasise this because we don't know if it's true. But what we have done is pass it on to the New South Wales Police. It's gone through the official channels to the cold case unit. And what they've said to us is, thank you for the information and we'll look into it and we'll get back to you.
We haven't found Trudie's body, But we have thoroughly investigated Neville Tween, the man we believe killed her. And we've exposed corrupt senior cop Mark Standen's disturbingly close relationship with Neville Tween.
"40 years is a long time to not know what's happened to a person who you loved, and I think it is remarkable that Trudy hasn't been forgotten."
Yeah, I think something that I said right at the very beginning is that what we would both hope, I'm sure, is that this actually shakes something loose, that there's some little piece of information out there somewhere that somebody who watches or listens or reads about it remembers something.
I think we've done everything that we can. We've gone back as far as we can. You know, the information that we have got, we've passed on to police. And so I think now we just wait and see if anything comes of this.
Went out to dinner last night at Colin Campbell Creek. It was so good. Had such a good time.
Whoever took Trudie Adams got away with murder. And unless conclusive evidence comes to light, all we're left with are memories. Until then, the only justice for Trudie's family and friends is that her story is not forgotten.